have to see these crises as not emerging just from what happened in the last few years. It has a long history. On the private sector side, I would argue that certainly in the United States, there has been a growing immiserization of the middle class. The middle class is falling further behind, and there have been a number of stopgap arrangements which have tried to put it back on the road, one of which, to my mind, was a credit expansion. And we've come to that end of that road with a full-fledged banking crisis in the United States. But that has also highlighted the weaknesses in government in the United States. There has been government expansion, especially in state and local governments for the last so many years. So the second part of this crisis is we're seeing the crisis of government. Societies which are aging are finding that they have to find some way to pay for it. And one of the ways to pay for aging societies is to become more efficient in government. It's not to say we need less government, but we need more effective government in many places. And so this crisis brings that also to the fore. My sense is we need to address these issues, address the issues of government, address the issues of capabilities of the people, make them more capable of the kind of work that is coming in the future. But of course, on top of all this, we also have to make the financial sector more stable. So lots of work to do in the years to come. In some sense, this crisis is a tragedy for the middle class. A tragedy both because it is affecting them directly in terms of jobs, in terms of pensions, etc. But it's also affecting them because, especially the people working today, know that going forward the future needs to be a much more constrained future in terms of benefits. What the crisis has done is brought it forward a number of years, which allows us greater freedom before population aging sets in, especially in countries of Europe, such as Italy or even Germany. I think the emphasis has to be in the years to come on efficiency for government services, on capabilities for the individual, and on stability for the financial sector. For sure, technology is making it much harder to function in the workforce with the kinds of skills that one had in the past. Take my own job as a teacher. What we're seeing is the best teachers can go onto the internet and provide you a wonderful lecture, and they give it free of cost. So what is the service that I'm providing? How is it that you're going to continue paying me for my job? I have to figure out ways that I add value. And typically the ways we're going to add value is going to be by being more creative. Not everybody cannot be creative, but we all have to at least try. I think we have to internalize that. We have to change in order to stay where we are. If you think about jobs in the United States, 80% of jobs are in the service sector. So the idea that manufacturing was important has been on the decline for the last so many years, right? Manufacturing jobs have steadily gone elsewhere. So we have to all pretty much think about service jobs. Now, there are high-quality service jobs, there are low-quality service jobs. We cannot protect the existing jobs the way they are, because there are so many ways around whatever barriers we put up that any protectionism is going to be doomed. One of the difficulties for economists in talking about the future is it's very easy to point to jobs that are going away. Mm-hmm. Much harder to point to jobs that are coming. But what you do know is to do those jobs, you need to have the skills, you need to have the capabilities. The one thing you have to focus on is trying to make sure that your workforce has the capabilities, that your workforce has the health. Health and education are both very important, and those things are aligned with the kind of jobs that are being created by the service industry in your country. There should be a dialogue between academia and industry, between academia, local government, industry, that we need more of to make sure there is a fit. I think those are two enormous countries that the world should be supporting. The broader issue is people see them often in the industrial West as a threat. How are we going to compete when all those workers come on board? We tend to forget the fact that every worker who's successful there also is a consumer. And as a consumer, what they aspire for is not their own products, but the products the West makes. Western movies, Western fashions, Western clothes. So I think there are gains on both sides. However, I think what is important to remember is that it's not the same market as it was. So historically, the West has looked at those markets as a reflection of themselves. That has been a source of enormous sales. Mercedes is the biggest market for Mercedes S-Class vehicles in the world now is China. So that will continue. But I think the bigger story is how do you produce for the market that's actually there, as opposed to the market that looks like us. Because the market that's actually there is a big middle class which earns maybe 10,000 euros a year if they're affluent. How do you produce for that market? Typically, the product that you will sell there will not be the same product that you would sell for the much richer, affluent household that exists locally. How do you sell to those markets? How do you give them the kinds of products that they need? And this is where firms from industrial countries, because those markets are exploding, have to have more of a presence, a contact there to understand what's important in those markets. So yes, some companies are doing design and R&D in India and China using the cheap labor, but they also find they need to do R&D in the US, in Europe, because that's where they have the high quality labor. Eventually people there will become higher quality than they are. There will be much higher quality. Even now there are pockets which are very high quality. But how do you make the transition? This may be the most critical time in the history of our capitalism. Because if we go backwards and start saying, no, this is not going to work out, we fear those countries, we fear our own future. And governments succumb to populism. And populism usually has elements of protectionism, but also in elements of internal conflict. We've been down that path before in the reaction to the 30s. First, we had war, which was not a good outcome. But after the war, we had the elements of the welfare state constructed. But we were constructing it at a time when, because of the destruction of the war, we had many years of growth. Let's hope we don't have war. If we don't have war, we will be trying to remodel the world in an environment of relatively low growth. I think you have to hope that confidence will prevail, that the adjustment will happen without enormous anger against the system. Again, it's not that the system works. We need to fix the size of government, we need to improve capabilities, we need to improve stability of the financial system. But the system, by and large, of capitalism, of free enterprise, I should say, rather than capitalism, is something that we should try and preserve.